Have you ever wondered what happens when a legend starts to fade? In 1976, the man who defined American toughness was fighting his own quiet battle. John Wayne, the name itself, brings images of strength, cowboys, and unbeatable spirit. But behind those famous blue eyes, a storm was brewing. Picture this: the mighty John Wayne, who taught 3 generations how to stand tall, was now struggling to catch his breath between takes. The Duke, as everyone called him, kept his trademark smile on, but those close to him could see something wasn't right. His booming voice, the one that commanded respect across Hollywood for decades, would sometimes fade to a whisper. The real drama wasn't in the movies he was making, it was in the moments between action and cut. Wayne refused to let anyone see his weakness. He'd straighten that tall frame, adjust his cowboy hat, and push through the pain. But at night, alone in his room, even legends must face their truths. This isn't just a story about an actor getting sick. It's about watching Superman discover his kryptonite. It's about a man who represented American invincibility, facing something he couldn't outshoot, outride, or outfight. The most heartbreaking part? He kept showing up, kept working, kept being John Wayne, because that's what his fans needed him to be. The year 1976 wasn't just another year in Wayne's career, it was the beginning of the end of an era. As the California sun set on those long filming days, nobody knew they were watching the final chapter of America's greatest cowboy unfold. If you think this story of strength, pride, and facing mortality has touched you so far, you haven't seen anything yet. The Duke's final battle would prove to be his most courageous performance, one without cameras rolling. Don't miss what happens next in this incredible true story. Hit that like button if you want to honor the memory of this legend, and subscribe to follow the entire dramatic journey of John Wayne's last stand. Sometimes, real heroes don't win their final fight, but it's how they face it that makes them immortal. They say your past always catches up with you, even if you're John Wayne. The year is now 1977, and the shadows that had been quietly stalking the Duke were getting darker and longer. Remember those classic movies where Wayne would light up a cigarette, looking cool and unbeatable? Well, life has a way of writing ironic scripts. 4 to 5 packs a day, for over 40 years. That's not just a habit, that's a time bomb. But here's the real twist in our story. It wasn't just the cigarettes that were haunting the Duke. Let's go back to 1956, to the Utah desert, where Wayne filmed The Conqueror. What nobody knew then was that this beautiful desert was carrying a deadly secret. Just 137 miles away, the government had been testing nuclear weapons. The sand Wayne walked on, the air he breathed. All of it was dancing with invisible danger. Out of the 220 people who worked on that film, 91 would eventually develop cancer. By 1977, these ghosts from the past were starting to show their faces. Wayne's legendary strength was being tested not by movie villains, but by something far more sinister. His children noticed how he'd get tired more easily. His friends saw how the long days on movie sets were becoming harder to handle. But Wayne, being Wayne, kept his struggles private. The most painful part? He knew something was wrong. Those sleepless nights when he'd pace around his California home, looking at old movie posters, remembering the invincible hero he used to be. The man who had fought Indians, outlaws, and enemies in countless movies was now fighting invisible enemies in his own body. This chapter of Wayne's life teaches us something powerful. Sometimes our biggest battles aren't fought with guns or fists, but with the choices we made long ago. The Duke was about to face the biggest showdown of his life, and this time, There was no script to tell him how it would end. January 1978 hit like a bullet no one saw coming. The Duke, the man who taught America how to be tough, sat in a sterile doctor's office at UCLA Medical Center. The news landed harder than any movie punch he'd ever taken: stomach cancer. You know what made this moment truly heartbreaking? When the doctor delivered the news, Wayne didn't flinch. Those who were there say he took it just like his movie characters would, with a straight spine and steady eyes. But this wasn't a movie, and there wouldn't be a second take. "Well, let's face it, partner," he reportedly said to his doctor, using that famous drawl that had charmed millions. "I've had a hell of a run." Even facing death, the Duke was still the Duke. But behind those brave words, a storm was raging. His family, 7 children who had always seen their father as invincible, struggled to accept that their hero was mortal after all. Here's where the story gets really powerful. Wayne had already beaten cancer once before, lung cancer in 1964. He'd lost 4 ribs and his left lung in that battle. But this time was different. This enemy was stronger, meaner, and playing for keeps. Yet, Wayne refused to let it break his spirit. He even joked, "I'm still the stuff that made John Wayne." The news spread through Hollywood like wildfire. Studios held their breath. Fans around the world prayed. But Wayne? He was more worried about his family than himself. He gathered them all together, looked them in the eyes, and promised to fight this battle like he'd fought every other one in his life. Head on, no surrender. What makes this chapter so touching isn't just the diagnosis. It's how Wayne handled it. In an era when cancer was whispered about in dark corners, he faced it in the open. He showed America that even heroes get scared, get sick, but never stop fighting. The year was 1979, and Hollywood was about to witness something unforgettable. Picture this: the Academy Awards ceremony, glittering with stars, but all eyes were on one man, John Wayne, making what would become his final public appearance. Behind the scenes, the reality was brutal. The Duke was running on borrowed time, fighting waves of pain that would have brought down any ordinary man. His suits, once perfectly fitted, now hung loose on his frame. But what happened next shows why legends are legends. When Johnny Carson announced him, Wayne didn't just walk onto that Oscar stage, he owned it. The audience erupted in a standing ovation that seemed to last forever. There he stood. Thinner, yes. Weaker, yes. But still every inch the Duke. His famous smile, though tired, still had the power to light up the whole room. What the cameras didn't show was the incredible effort it took. Earlier that day, his family had begged him not to go. His doctors warned against it. But Wayne had said something that perfectly summed up his whole life. "I'm John Wayne. I've got to go out there and be John Wayne." He knew his fans needed one last look at their hero. The most heartbreaking part? While presenting the Best Picture award, his hands shook slightly holding the envelope. But his voice, that famous, powerful voice, never wavered. He cracked jokes, flashed that legendary smile, and for a few precious minutes, everyone could pretend that the Duke wasn't dying. This wasn't just an awards show appearance. It was a final gift to his fans, a last lesson in courage. Here was a man, knowing he was near the end, choosing to stand tall one more time. He showed us that true grit isn't about being unbeatable. It's about keeping your dignity even when you're beaten.